A massive grizzly bear was seen dragging a tiny black kitten into the woods. Locals feared the worst. Cameras were rolling, and everyone braced for tragedy. But what happened next stunned wildlife experts, veterinarians, and even hardened rangers. Behind this shocking act was a reason no one could have imagined, one that would leave an entire town speechless and in tears. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. These powerful real-life stories help us reconnect with what matters most, and your support brings more of them to life. Now get ready, this story will change the way you see wild animals forever. Maple Hollow was a place where not much happened, at least not until early spring, when the snow was just beginning to melt and the forest stirred with the quiet breath of new life. Elliot Morgan lived on the edge of the woods in a small cabin he'd built himself after retiring early from his job in town. At 62, he preferred solitude, the kind found only in bird calls, wind, and the occasional deer wandering too close to his porch. His only companion was Luna, a small jet-black kitten he had rescued from a storm drain the previous fall. She was barely old enough to be weaned when he found her, soaked, shivering, and so quiet she barely made a sound. But in the months since, she had become his shadow, curling in his lap while he read, pawing at his pant leg while he made tea, meowing softly at the window whenever he stepped outside. Then one morning, she was gone. No warning. No signs of struggle. Just an open window with a torn screen and tiny paw prints leading toward the woods. Elliot's heart sank. He spent the entire day searching, calling her name, shaking a bag of treats, tracking tiny prints that disappeared under pine needles. By dusk, the reality began to settle. Luna had wandered too far. And there were predators out here, wolves, coyotes, birds of prey, and bears. The next morning, Elliot woke early and returned to the trail behind his property. Something gnawed at him, not just fear, but urgency. At the base of a slope, he found a few strands of black fur caught on a branch and fresh prints, but not Luna's. They were massive, clawed-deep, grizzly bear tracks. His breath caught. Half a mile in, Elliot reached a clearing, and what he saw made him freeze. A large female grizzly was sitting among the tall grass and early ferns. Her head was low. Nestled against her chest was a tiny black kitten. Luna. She wasn't moving, but she wasn't dead. The bear, impossibly, was licking her. Gently. Protectively. Like she was hers. Elliot dropped to his knees, stunned. He didn't know what to do. And he didn't yet understand why. Elliot stayed low, half hidden behind a thicket of spruce branches, his breath fogging in the morning chill. He couldn't stop staring. The bear, enormous, likely over 300 pounds, had Luna curled against her like a foregone litter. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She nudged Luna softly with her muzzle, then looked up, scanning the forest with an expression that, unbelievably, seemed tired, heavy, almost sad. Elliot had seen grizzlies before, from a distance. But nothing like this. He watched for several minutes, unsure if Luna was even alive. Then she moved, just a flicker. Her tail curled. Her paw flexed. She was breathing. Still weak, but alive. He slowly backed away, heart pounding, and made his way home. He needed help, but not from the kind who'd bring guns or traps. Luna wasn't in danger of being eaten. Something else was happening. He picked up the phone and called Claire. Claire Durant had spent 12 years with Montana Fish and Wildlife, specializing in large carnivores. She'd tracked bears, rehabilitated them, relocated them, and once even helped raise a pair of orphaned cubs. She knew how to read bear behavior, and she trusted Elliot. They had met years ago when Elliot had reported a poacher on his land. They'd stayed in touch ever since. "What did you say?" she asked on the phone. "I think a grizzly took my kitten," Elliot said. Silence. "And she's taking care of her?" By dusk, Claire had arrived with binoculars, gear, and a face full of skepticism. "I'll believe it when I see it," she muttered. But after an hour of tracking, she stood in the same clearing, jaw clenched, staring at the impossible. The bear was still there, and Luna was still tucked against her. Claire took slow, quiet photos. "She's not treating her like prey," she whispered. "She's treating her like a cub." They moved back and set up a watch post with a wildlife camera at a safe distance. Over the next 48 hours, they watched as the grizzly stayed near the same area, moving slowly, feeding little, resting often. She left Luna only once to scavenge a nearby carcass. When she returned, she licked the kitten's face and curled around her again. Claire grew quiet as the pieces started to click. "She lost a cub," she said flatly. "Recently?" Elliot looked up. Claire nodded. "It's the only explanation. She's in a grief pattern. Searching, pacing, then fixating. She found Luna, and something in her clicked." Later that night, Claire downloaded the trail cam footage. In one clip, the bear is seen dragging something soft, her own cub's remains, and burying it under brush. Then returning to where she found Luna. Grief had driven her to take in the tiny creature that cried like something she'd just lost. "She didn't kidnap Luna," Claire said, wiping her eyes. "She adopted her." The days that followed were filled with tension and awe. Elliot and Claire took shifts watching from the blind they'd set up just beyond the ridge. They brought a long lens, heat monitors, and a tiny drone they barely used, afraid the hum would break the strange, fragile peace between predator and prey. But the more they watched, the clearer it became, there was no threat. The bear, now dubbed Fern by Claire for the patch of ferns she bedded down in every night, had fully accepted Luna as her own. One afternoon, Fern let out a soft, guttural moan, a sound Claire identified as a reassurance call, a sound mother bears used to soothe their cubs. Luna responded with a tiny squeak and climbed awkwardly onto Fern's forearm. The massive bear shifted slightly and settled into the earth, her body curved gently around the kitten's tiny frame. Claire's voice trembled. "She's protecting her from the cold." Elliot said nothing. He couldn't. On the fourth day, something changed. Fern stood suddenly at dawn and began walking, slowly, deliberately, and Luna followed. She didn't run. She didn't meow or hide. She simply padded alongside the giant bear's rear paws, slipping slightly on moss, tail held high. Claire and Elliot watched from a distance, tracking their path for nearly half a mile. "She's bringing her somewhere," Claire said. "Back to the den?" Elliot asked. Claire shook her head. "No. Somewhere else." It wasn't a den. It was a quiet patch of forest near a small stream, surrounded by wind-fallen logs and soft moss. There, Fern lay down again. Luna curled beside her. Claire studied the sight. She's choosing a safer place. One she feels she can defend. Elliot nodded slowly. She's staying. That night, Elliot walked alone. He stood near the stream, just far enough to avoid the bear's senses but close enough to see her through the brush. Luna was asleep between Fern's front paws. The bear was awake, watching. Her eyes met his for a single moment. Not wide with warning, not locked in aggression, but something else, recognition. Something unspoken passed between them, two creatures bound by loss, now sharing in something neither could name. Back at the cabin, Elliot couldn't sleep. He looked at the food bowl still on the kitchen floor, the collar Luna had never needed, the frayed toy mouse on the windowsill. It all felt hollow, but somehow not in a painful way. "She's not ours anymore," he told Claire the next morning. "She's Fern's now." Claire gave a small, bittersweet smile. "Maybe she was always hers. She just came to you first because Fern wasn't ready." Elliot stared into the forest. "I don't think any of us were." On the 7th day, the quiet shattered. Claire's phone buzzed with an alert. Someone had posted a blurry image on a local wildlife forum. It showed a grizzly with something small and black tucked against her side. The caption read, "Grizzly spotted with cub, or is that a house cat?" Elliot read the comments with a pit growing in his stomach. Some freak hybrid thing. Someone better trap that bear. Can't let this go on. It's unnatural. Could be dangerous. Claire's lips thinned. "We need to act before someone else does." That afternoon, Claire drove into town to meet with the Regional Wildlife Board. She planned to present the footage, the data, the behavioral notes, everything that proved Fern was not a threat. Elliot stayed behind. He couldn't stand the idea of leaving Luna alone. He walked the familiar trail to Fern's new resting place near the stream. He didn't get too close, but he sat within sight. He'd started bringing a thermos and a folding stool. Watching them brought him peace. That day, Fern was especially alert. Her ears twitched at every snap of a twig. Luna was curled at her belly, eyes closed. Then something shifted, a sound from deeper in the trees. Not wildlife. Boots. Elliot turned, heart racing. A man stood less than 30 yards away, holding a long camera lens. Not a hunter, at least not openly, but his shirt bore the logo of a local media station. "Hey," Elliot called. The man startled. Elliot rushed toward him. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm with Channel 4, the man said. "Got a tip about the bear. Thought I might catch a shot." "You're trespassing on private land." The man didn't move. "You see it? That bear's got a kitten. You know what kind of clicks that'll get." Elliot clenched his jaw. "You take one more step toward them, I'll make sure you're banned from every trailhead in the state." The man backed up slowly. All right. But the damage was done. Fern had risen. She stood tall now, body blocking Luna, nostrils flared, her eyes locked on the man, then Elliot, then back again. She wasn't charging, but she was warning. The man left, but Fern didn't lie down again. That night, Elliot stayed until dark, just watching, feeling the tension. Claire returned the next morning with news. "They're not going to intervene yet, but the footage is out. It's spreading. People are curious, and that means they'll come." She looked him in the eye. "We don't have long." That evening, Elliot sat alone on his porch. Rosy light from the sunset bathed the edge of the woods. For the first time in days, Luna didn't meow. She didn't appear. She was with Fern. And Fern was watching everything. Elliot raised his mug toward the tree lean. "I see you," he whispered. "And I'm with you." Claire returned the next day with a ranger's vest in her trunk and a printed letter from the regional office. "They're sending a federal team out in 72 hours, she said flatly. "They want to tranquilize Fern and relocate her. If they can get the cat too, they'll bring it to a shelter." Elliot's chest tightened. They'll separate them. Claire nodded. That's the plan. There were rules, and this situation, as unique and unbelievable as it was, broke too many of them. A grizzly bear and a kitten weren't meant to share a bond. It made people nervous. It made officials act. Elliot walked to the clearing that evening, alone. Fern was there. So was Luna. He sat on the same log he'd visited for days now. He didn't speak. Didn't try to get closer. He just watched as Fern gently nosed a beetle away from Luna's paw, then licked the kitten's ear with surprising delicacy. And for the first time, Luna noticed him. She stood, walked halfway to the edge of the clearing, then stopped. Elliot whispered, "You okay, little one?" She blinked. Fern let out a soft exhale, like wind over pine needles. Then something snapped in the forest behind him, a footstep, a metallic clink. Elliot turned fast. Two men. Not rangers. Civilians. One held a rifle. The other had a phone out, recording. "What the hell are you doing?" Elliot shouted, stepping in front of them. "Just documenting," one replied, not lowering his gun. "You've seen the videos. That bear's not acting right. She's not hurting anyone. She's still a wild animal." They moved closer. Before Elliot could say more, Fern rose. The sound of her breathing deepened. Luna dashed behind her massive frame. The two men froze, but the one with the rifle kept it half-raised. "She's going to charge." "She won't," Elliot said, voice low, "unless you give her a reason." Claire arrived minutes later, tires skidding on gravel, siren off but lights flashing. She stepped between them like a wall. "Drop the gun," she ordered. "You're on protected land and threatening a federally listed species. You want to explain that to fish and wildlife?" The men backed off reluctantly, but Fern didn't sit down for a long time. Later, back at the cabin, Claire poured whiskey into 2 mugs. Elliot took his in silence, then said, "What if we moved her first?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "You mean without them?" "No," he said. "With them." She looked at him long and hard. "You're talking about smuggling a grizzly bear and a kitten. I'm talking about giving them a chance." Claire didn't answer, but she didn't say no. The plan was risky, illegal, technically. But Claire knew someone. A private wildlife sanctuary in Idaho. Remote, secure, not listed publicly. A place where orphaned bears had been placed before. It wasn't approved for this kind of relocation, not with an animal as high profile as Fern, but it was safe, and it was far away from the cameras, the rifles, and the headlines. They had less than 2 days. Elliot and Claire prepared the old utility trailer in his shed, reinforced the walls, lined the floor with straw and pine branches, laid out fresh salmon and water, and in one corner, a soft wool blanket with Luna's scent, the most important piece. Convincing Fern was the hardest part. They couldn't dart her, couldn't force her. So Elliot did what he'd been doing since the beginning, he trusted her. That morning, he walked to the stream clearing. No binoculars, no gear. Just himself. Fern was there. Luna was curled up at her side, grooming a paw. He stepped into the open slowly, hands visible. Fern stood. Luna meowed. Elliot stopped 10 feet away, then knelt. "I need your help," he said quietly. "They're coming, and they'll take you away. I can't stop them unless you come with me. Just this once." He backed away, walked the full mile back home, left the trailer open, waited for hours, nothing. Then, Just as dusk painted the trees with gold, a rustle in the brush. Claire grabbed his arm. "Look!" Fern stepped out of the forest, Luna at her feet. Both cautious. Both watching. They didn't run. They walked straight into the trailer. Elliot closed the latch softly. Claire let out the breath she'd been holding. They left that night under moonlight, avoiding the highways, crossing county lines in silence. At the sanctuary, a small team waited. No cameras, no crowds. Just caretakers who'd been briefed. When they opened the trailer, Fern stepped out first. She looked around, calm but alert. Then Luna followed. They were shown to an enclosure beside a wide ravine with trees and a shallow stream. A transition space, not forever, but for now. Fern sniffed the ground, then lay down near the water's edge. Luna climbed onto her back and stretched, tail twitching. Safe. Together. Elliot stood at the fence with Claire. He didn't say a word, but his eyes glistened. As they left, one of the caretakers handed Elliot a photo they'd taken, Fern curled in the grass, Luna tucked beneath her chin. He turned it over. On the back it read, "The world doesn't always make sense, but sometimes love does." It had been 3 months since the relocation. Summer had arrived early, and with it came the hush of healing, the kind that settles over quiet land when the world stops watching. Elliot visited once a week. Not as a guardian. Not even as Luna's owner. Just as someone who had loved and let go, and now came only to witness what had grown from it. At the sanctuary, Fern had claimed her territory, the ravine, the shaded grove, the open meadow near the rocks. And Luna, she remained at her side, though she was bigger now, more agile, more independent. She never strayed far. Her black fur stood out like ink on parchment against the bear's thick golden-brown coat. Caretakers said it was rare, astonishing even, but not unnatural. They'd seen odd pairings before, but never one that lasted. Never one that chose to. One day, Elliot arrived and found Luna lying alone near the stream. He panicked at first, until he saw Fern nearby, chewing slowly on a branch, keeping one eye trained on the kitten from a distance. Luna spotted him. She stood, stretched, and trotted to the fence, tail high. Elliot knelt. He reached through and touched her head gently. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered. "You look well." She rubbed against his fingers, then pulled back and returned to Fern, who let out a low, contented huff and curled her body around the kitten protectively. Elliot wiped his eyes and smiled. Claire met him on the trail that afternoon. She'd taken a job consulting for the sanctuary. They were expanding, making room for more displaced wildlife. "Did I tell you?" she asked, handing him a paper. It was a letter from the regional director. After reviewing the footage, the behavior logs, and expert evaluations, the case had been closed. Fern would not be relocated again. The sanctuary would be her permanent home, Luna's too, if she chose. No cages. No interference. Just freedom. That night, back at the cabin, Elliot framed the letter beside the photo he'd been given. And below it, he placed a handwritten note of his own. "She was never mine to keep, only mine to protect until she found the one who needed her most." A year later, a ranger posted a video from the sanctuary. It showed Fern resting beneath a tree, snoring softly in the heat, and Luna, grown now, curled against her belly. The caption simply read, "Still together." It went viral in a matter of hours. But by then, the world's noise didn't matter. Because in that quiet part of the woods, love had found a place to live and to stay. If this story moved you, remember, sometimes the most powerful bonds form between the most unlikely hearts. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who believes in kindness beyond species. Let's spread the message that love, in any form, is always worth protecting.